Hey everyone, welcome back to Mama Genius Hub podcast. Again, we have another wonderful guest in store for you. Jessica is going to come on here and tell us about how we should help our teens navigate their social world. And let's just be honest, it's so different from when we were doing it. They got the phones in front of them. They got all the things they need to navigate between, just so much more just right in front of them. And so how do we help support that? Jessica's going to give us some ideas on that. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Mama Genius Hub podcast, where we support moms with big dreams, from entrepreneurship to personal aspirations. I'm your host, Michelle DeKeyser, and I'm here to help you unlock your potential in all areas of life. Join us as we explore strategies for thriving in motherhood while pursuing the dreams, the key to actually unlocking your genius. Subscribe now and embark on a journey to realize your fullest potential. Now, Jessica Speer is an award-winning author of books for kids and teens, including the phone book, Stay Safe, Be Smart, and Make the World Better with Powerful Devices in Your Hands. BFF or NRF, not really friends. That's such a different age with middle school girls, especially. A Girl's Guide to Happy Friendships and Middle School. Safety Google advised. Blending social sciences, stories, and activities, her writing guides readers through tricky stuff that surfaced during childhood and adolescence. Welcome, Jessica. We're so excited to have you today.
Thanks so much, Michelle. It's great to be here. I'm excited to chat with you.
Me too. Your topic was just one that spoke to my heart, especially as I have a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old, and just they're getting the phones, navigating all of that. I was like, we need some perspective on just how to do it, because we grow up with it, but also just things are ever evolving, and just the more we can be open-minded on how to support them. So I just want to jump right in. What is your why for even wanting to work with teens or kids or even talk about this subject?
Good question. And I just love that age. I love adolescents because so much is happening. Their bodies are changing, their brains are changing, their social world is changing, how they feel about themselves is changing. So I just love to put out tools for this age group to use. And so my books tend to, like, the group that tends to read my books the most is like 8 to maybe 13. And that is a time of life that there is a ton of change in this early adolescence period. So I just love this age because there's so much opportunity and growth happening there. So I love to study it. I love to work with kids in that age range, and then write books for them as well.
I love that so much. And I truly think people are really like when they find their genius and really hone into it. Because I'll say I taught middle school English for one semester. We also knew we were moving and stuff, but it was like a very trying period. I was also pregnant at the time, but I just, for me, it wasn't quite the fix. I kind of like high school or elementary a little bit better, but like, I love people who want to take on this age. And that's why I wanted you on this podcast, because I want to draw out your knowledge and your wisdom to how to maneuver, especially since you love it so much. And I want to release some of the ideas that we label age groups, like, like how hard the teens are and stuff. I want to make it that we're enjoying our kids in every phase of their lives. And so bringing experts like you who can bring that joy back out and how we make those relationships stronger with our kids. And so thank you so much I just want to say thank you again for coming on here, and just want to kind of jump into that joy of it all. Cause I know we were talking about the social aspects of what the teens are navigating. And so how do we help them navigate that without being those helicopter parents?
Yeah. And what I found first is helpful to parents is to what's really going on developmentally for our kids, because once we know that, we might freak out just a little bit less. So there tends to be a lot of transition and change during this phase, which might start maybe 10 or 11 and go all the way through the teen years. What's happening here is kids are starting this process of individuating from their parents, which means, well, they spend their whole childhood kind of individuating from us, but it speeds up during this period. And during that period, they're putting a lot more weight in their friendships. Okay, so their peers, their opinions matter a lot, their friendships matter a lot, and parents in families taking just a little bit more of a back seat. At the same time, they're really starting to explore their own identity. Like, who am I? Who are my friends? What do I like? And, they might even, as we've seen kids start to try on some different personalities, try on some different styles. So that also helps their friendships have a lot of fluctuation too. They might try what it's like to be with a different group, or they might feel like a friendship isn't a fit anymore. So that's happening At the same time, where relationships are getting a little more complicated and require a little more social emotional skills, which are still rough. We spend our whole lives developing socially and emotionally. Things really ramp up during the adolescent years as kids are just starting to build these skills. Like, how do I speak up for myself? How do I solve conflict in healthy ways? How do I navigate and learn to manage my emotions? So all of that is playing out, and relationships and friendships are a training ground for all that. So what I like to say to parents is, yeah, sometimes this gets a little messy, but it's okay. Through all of these experiences, they're learning. And what we can do, what is so helpful on our end, is just to remain a really steady presence. Don't freak out if they come home and tell you something that sounds really horrible. Try not to go on that emotional roller coaster with them. Just settle yourself, take a deep breath, empathize, like, I'm so sorry that happened. That sounds really hard. Tell me about that. So instead of, reacting with them, being a grounding place where they can come and share, and they know that that it's safe with you and they can get things off their chest. And so that's one of the best things we can do as parents. Sometimes we get in problem solving mode. I sometimes do that myself, but often, once kids get to that age, that's not actually what they need. What they need is, a sounding board to help them process their experiences and emotions out loud.
I like to say the best thing you can do with your kids is just put your lips together and let the silence speak for itself,
Mhm.
and just see what comes out from the silence, and not, like you said, sometimes it's in our instincts to try to fix it or try to do these things, but they need to be able to try to like figure out, do I have the confidence to figure out the situation for myself? And then you can be that sounding board to let them come up with that solution in your presence when you close your
Yeah.
mouth. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's so hard.
It is such a practice, but if we think about it, as they're processing things out loud, they're starting to figure it out. So just that process of putting it in words, or if they're not into that, maybe they can journal or something, but putting things into words helps them start to figure things out on their own. So that's actually an important step of the process. It helps them start to navigate and let go some of those emotions, is actually acknowledging them and putting words to them. So by keeping our mouth shut, we can help with that process. And there's nothing more healing than feeling heard.
Oh my gosh, so true. And just to think about how you feel when you're actually heard by someone who doesn't cut you off and say, "Well, I think you should do this."
Yeah.
And I mean, how many of you can think of your spouse doing that to you, your friends doing that to you, and now someone who's trying to figure that out for themselves, and like at this age when like things are so like new to them,
Yeah.
the more we can empower them to really put their own thoughts and energy into, and the beauty part is when you allow them to do it, they're doing it in front of you versus trying
Yes.
to hide in a corner doing it away from you. And that's the
Mhm.
difference between the two. And really just right now, I think we need to like put those listening skills to practice and really just focus on that as these teenagers start to emerge and make you want to pull your hair out.
Yeah, and truly, it is different now growing up, and what's happening with kids and their relationships. It's a different world. So often if we jump in with some advice, it is so off base, and that's going to just shut down. So things are more complicated, we don't really get it. So often our advice is it just sounds silly to them. Like, that's not even possible, mom. That's such a bad idea, mom.
Exactly. So we'll be back in one moment. We're going to come back and we're talk a little bit about the cell phone because she's got some ideas for us on that too. Attention mompreneurs. Do you feel like you're constantly juggling the responsibilities without a moment to yourself? It's time to pause and reflect with our Mama Genius quiz. Tailored for busy mamas like you, this quiz will help you identify what's blocking your path and inspire you to harness your unique strengths. Transform how you manage life and business, find your rhythm, and ignite your joy. Visit mamageniushub.com today to discover your Mama Genius. And that's mamageniushub.com. And we're back. So we were talking before we got onto the podcast stuff, always in the back, but we were talking about which way do we go with this. And so we wanted to talk about the whole aspect of social development. And we were talking about how things have changed for us. I mean, we have these little devices in our hands, but now they're getting them. And I mean, think about the fact of how powerful they are and how much information is just in overload and how to even navigate that while all these body changes are happening and trying to figure out who you are. And you just have information overload. I mean, we didn't have any of that. We had our little encyclopedias in the back room, right? That we had to go figure out, like, maybe the information might be in there. Let me go find the library card and like figure out if I can go get a book on it. But now everything's at their fingertips. So I want to, how do we navigate that as well in terms of really giving them a chance to navigate the phone by themselves? But where does that come into play with that social aspect too? Because now we got texting, we got cyberbullying, and all of the stuff that comes with this little device.
Yes. Yeah, and it's a big, and so I wrote this book. I'm just grabbing it. So I wrote this book during the pandemic. It's called The Phone Book. Stay safe, be smart, and make the world better with the powerful device in your hand. And I wrote that kind of seeing what was happening. We were already on this trajectory as a world that kids were getting devices earlier and earlier, and I realized that the guardrails aren't really there in place yet, as far as like the safety belts for kids in the realm of technology. So I wanted to write that book to talk about all the things that we as parents want our kids to know before they get their devices. So that talks about stranger danger and privacy and cyberbullying and digital drama and social media and FOMO, all those things that come up that we want to make sure our kids are really aware of before they get their phone. But let me tell you this, Michelle, which has been really interesting. So since this book came out in 2021. After that, the book, it's an adult nonfiction called The Anxious Generation, came out by Jonathan Haidt. And I am seeing a shift on the ground. In fact, I talked last night at an elementary school for parents that want to get together and figure out how to delay giving their kids smartphones. So right now, the average age in America, the kids get a smartphone, is somewhere between 11 and 12. So it happens to be middle school. Given the research and the way that Jonathan Haidt put that research in that book, The Anxious Generation, a lot of parents are saying, whoa, wait, let's delay this a little bit. It doesn't mean we can't give our middle schoolers some sort of communication device. It might just not be a smartphone. So something that might be more simple, that has just calling and texting, and then wait till maybe high school to give the fully connected smartphone where they're actually accessing social media. So I'm starting to see that shift. I'm starting to see more and more schools pulling phones out, even at the high school level. So I'm only bringing that up because it's, that wasn't the case when this book came out. I'm seeing this, and I'm actually pleased about it, because what concerns me about these the early teen years is there's so much going on in development, that, and their confidence drops. And then all of a sudden they have this active online presence, and, likes from friends mean so much. Comments from friends mean so much. And it can really tear up, young adolescents, all this peer feedback and the constant need to put themselves out there. It can really take a toll on their self-esteem. And it's part of the reason we're seeing so much increase in depression and anxiety in that age range. But there's a shift going on. Regardless, whenever you decide is the right time for your child or teen to get a fully connected smartphone and maybe get on social media, there's lots of conversations that go along with that. And I encourage parents to start those way early. Like you started, even when they were in preschool or elementary school, lots of conversations about these devices and how to stay safe and use them in positive ways, because they are amazing tools and there's so many positives. So we have to talk about all those positives, but then we also have to talk about the drawbacks and make them really aware of that too.
Well, I love that so much. And I've actually seen, I think my kids in middle school, like like my daughter just moved to 6th grade. So, and my son had a smartwatch for 2 years, but then we had to move over to the phones just based on like what was available. But I'm noticing like they were one of the last ones. A lot of them are getting in elementary
Yes.
as well. But what I'm noticing, and so some of the things is like setting things into play before they get the phones. Like we don't have any social media apps on their phones. And right now, like for the 11-year-old, when they're 13, actually Google like takes you away from, like gives them full access to it. Like Google does it without even your permission. And like, there's nothing I can even do about it if I want him to be able to use it. Like it's fully accessed once they turn 13, but then you can still monitor. And so I think also setting guidelines for you and your kids in terms of how you're like, my kids know, I know their password. I can look at it anytime I want. If you set that up ahead of time, then you kind of already like, I'm not going to, setting up what are the expectations and decide what that is for your family, whatever that works for you. But doing that before you hand the phone to them. And I'll be honest with you, my son actually doesn't even want it at all.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that. And so this sounds complicated, but if anybody listening searches family tech agreement, there are
Yeah.
so many models out there. In fact, the American Academy of Pediatrics has a family tech agreement based on age. So if you've got a 10-year-old, it'll have a template for you. Here's what's appropriate developmentally for 10-year-olds. Common Sense Media has one. Healthy Screen. There's so many out there, so you can find one that is right for your family. And what I found, it's a great conversation starter. So, so bring the draft family tech agreement to the dinner table and talk about it. Talk about it as a family. Like, how do we want to be as a family? Where are our screen-free zones in the home? At what time do all the phones go away? And really get everybody's buy-in and participation. And then, of course, that tech agreement changes as they grow, as they get more responsible. That changes over time. So now I've got older teens, and we have a very different deal with phones. But we started very clear and a lot more boundaries until I knew they were ready for certain apps and things like that. So that is a great place to start. And you don't have to create a new wheel. There's tons of templates out there for families
Exactly.
to talk about.
I love that so much, just because like looking at what is already available, using what's in front of you, but to really have those conversations beforehand. Sometimes they're uncomfortable, and sometimes, but you're like, you're not getting this without having these conversations first. We're having these agreements. And I mean, as soon as the kids come home, they just put their phones on the counter. Like, they don't even go to their rooms. And that's just something that they've actually decided. Like, neither of them really actually wanted the phone very much, but it was like, because they walked to school and stuff, that we just decided that they need it for those purposes. And so there aren't that many apps on it. They have to be approved before they get put on it. But again, these are all things that you can decide as a parent and child, what kind of agreement you want for that phone. But really, I just encourage you to put it into place before, not after, and just decide together, what does having a phone mean for your child versus giving them and then just like, oh, here, they can do whatever they want with it. I think that when we don't have those conversations is when we start to get into trouble. I don't know if you agree with me.
Oh, for sure. And there's so much learning that has to happen. In fact, one thing I find that the parents are surprised by is kids don't even really know how to navigate a group chat. Like, they need help with how to navigate a group
I don't
chat.
even know if I do.
Yeah, exactly. So for instance, say your child or teen ends up in a group chat, and they really want to ask somebody or ask the group to meet somewhere. So they might put that out there, and just, you never know. These are young people. So it might, fall on deaf ears. There might be no response. Somebody might change the subject. So even helping them navigate that. So, one solution is, hey, how about instead of throwing this out to the whole group, why don't you ask so and so if they want to meet, and then go back to the group chat and say, so and so and I are meeting here at this time. Would you like to join us? Because it's having a group try to figure out if they want to meet, where they want to meet, when they want to meet is really, it's not a pretty process. You don't want to look
No,
at
it is not. And even as adults, like all of a sudden you're like, no one's even responded. And then I've messed up some play dates for the kids because I didn't wasn't specific enough. And like, I tried to do ahead of time, and then it didn't work out when you put that all together. I love that so much. And also the other thing I want to throw out there and ask your opinion on it is the thing also with group chat is it's very easy to get into comparison mode when people start responding to different things. And how do we help navigate that a little bit too? Any suggestions on that?
What I always say to my kids is don't never make assumptions. We have no idea why somebody didn't respond. And often, when it comes to teens, okay, maybe there's something conflict that we don't know about, but often their phone died. Having two teens, their phones are almost always dead. So someone's phone might have died. Somebody might have lost their phone. Somebody might have gotten busy and forgotten to respond. So constantly reminding our kids, don't make assumptions on a non-response, because we have no idea. But with a young brain, they can tear themselves up and feel like, oh my gosh, something is wrong with this friendship, when actually they just lost their phone, or died. So yeah, that is something we constantly need to remind them of, because it's hard. As I talked about earlier, friendships play more of a role in their lives. So when it feels like it isn't going well, that's going to weigh heavily on their minds.
I love that so much. And it comes into play. Like, I was also just even myself, like I realized it's so easy to make an assumption in a text or an email because of the wording. And so even as adults, we're trying to navigate that too. But I've really just come to the conclusion to start asking more direct questions. And so I think the sooner we start teaching our kids to like not assume what it, but just politely ask, is this what you meant? Or is this what it is? Versus us, because when you assume, then that's when the mind starts telling you your story rather than what's actually happening.
Oh, yeah. And it's so hard to get clear communication through just text because, as we know, most communication is tone of voice, body language. So, what they're seeing in text is just a small part of the picture. So it also helps to explain why, this digital world is extra complicated for kids. It's hard to read all these dynamics going on. It was hard in person. When we were this age, it was hard enough in person, and now we shifted it all online. So the new term is digital drama. So yeah, when we were growing up, we just had drama, and now there's digital drama. So how that differs from our middle high school drama is it's shifted online and it's much more public, unfortunately. So if we might have had a conflict with somebody in the hall at school, now there's maybe a conflict playing out on Instagram or some feed or some group chat, and everybody's seeing it. So that's not ideal, but
Mhm.
that's the world they live in. So that gets us back to digital stress that sometimes kids have. There's a lot for them to keep up with, whether it's making sure they like all the posts that their friends share and put positive comments. Girls are really dedicated to doing that, but it's hard to keep up with that, or keeping up with the Snapchat streak, or keeping up, with what's going on TikTok. So it's a lot for kids to keep up on. So talk to them about that too, that that realizing, wow, that's a lot that you have to try to stay up on. And I found for my daughters, they like to take breaks in the summer, because in the summer they don't have to actually know what's going on on TikTok. They don't have to know what's going on with everybody's lives, and so it's a great time for them to just like pull back, and just be kids and teens, and get outside and have a much more relaxing life. And I often hear that they're jealous of us, that grew up in the 80s and 90s. They're kind of jealous of just the freedom that we had.
My 8-year-old daughter's favorite song is growing up, the one about growing up in the 90s, and she like doesn't even understand what half of it means, but she's like, I just love that song. But we'll be back in one moment. Do you ever feel like your own dreams are fading on you as you focus and keep everything together for your family, or been buried under laundry and school runs and endless to-do lists? They're so deep, you don't even know what they are anymore. The Mama Genius Hub is here to help you uncover that part of you again. Maybe you felt that pull to start a passion project, return to a hobby you once loved, or pursue a career that lights you up, but you're so caught in everyone else's needs that you keep slipping through the cracks. In just 15 minutes a day, our mini courses will help you reconnect with those dreams while finding a new rhythm in motherhood's beautiful, messy life. And best of all, you'll be doing it with a community of moms who truly understand the juggle and the joy. The Mama Genius Hub is a community who've been there and are here to support and inspire each other every step of the way. It's time to rediscover your spark, live in your genius, and inspire your kids by showing them how to follow their own passions. Join the Mama Genius Hub today and start creating space for you again without guilt or doing it solo.
Come to www.connectingmamas.com for more details.
And we're back. So we kind of want to jump into our final question, since we're running out of time a little bit, of what do you think is one of the misconceptions about motherhood that holds many moms back from truly stepping into their own genius?
Hmm. Oh, I think that we can't do it all. So I think we have to give ourselves a lot of there's no way to do this all perfectly. So pick the parts of your life that you just really want to try to do as best as you can, and put your energy there. So maybe you're somehow trying to manage kids and family as well as work, and that's a lot right there. So knowing we can't do all those perfectly, but we can do our best to do the best in those, which a lot of that is taking care of ourselves, which I love the work that you're doing, Michelle, because that's such a key part of that. If we're taking care of ourselves, we're gonna have a better chance of doing our best in those areas of life where we want to try to do our best.
I feel like you already answered the second part, was how do we shift that mindset? So I just kind of want to reiterate that it's like in taking care of ourselves first. And I know this saying has been on this podcast so many different times from so many different guests and stuff, but we can't put your oxygen amount off on first. You can't pour from an empty cup. But the truth is like when you're hungry, when you're irritable, like, and someone says something to you, what's going to happen is you snap back because, and so the same thing is when you're feeling that stress is that you feel that. And so your natural instinct is just, your reaction is to react rather than to respond. So when we start taking care of ourselves and doing those things, and really, I love how Jessica said that, realizing we can't do it all, but to pick the parts and do that our best and get support. And that's why this is podcast even exists, because I think that we need to do motherhood together, not by ourselves. So tell everyone, Jessica, how they can get hold of you, and you can respond to that as well.
No, I totally agree. And I so appreciate your work. It's so important. It's so lonely if we're trying to do this all by ourselves. So thank you for doing that. And the easiest place to get hold of me is my website, which is speer.com, and that has links off to my socials, information about my books. I also have a free monthly e-newsletter, and I talk all about kids and teens and ways to stay connected as a family, and how to stay safe online and develop healthy friendship skills. So that's all available on my website. So that's the easiest way, and you can reach out to me there too.
I love that so much. And so I'm going to put you backstage for just a moment as I give the key takeaways from today. So we'll have Jessica back in just a moment. So we're looking at what an inspiring conversation of just how do we help navigate in this different reality that we never had, right? Growing up in the 90s, we didn't have all that. Remember our phones that were attached to the walls and we're like holding those over? That doesn't exist. Everything is like at their fingertips. So let's go through our 5 takeaways. What's really going on developmental wise? So she really broke that down for us from the 10 to 11, like that they're really individualizing who they are. They're now weighing in on friendships more. They're figuring out who I am. What do I like now? And so it's not their need to adjust to who they're going to be rather than that where they were always attached to us. And so it's giving them that leg, that breath to do that, which leads us into number 2, our takeaway is being that grounding place. And realizing that they're working on their social emotional skills and learning how to solve those conflicts and navigate those emotions so that we are pursing those lips together and really being that steady presence for them and being empathetic to it. And I love how Jessica said, not to be on their emotional roller coaster with them and react with them, but rather just being that sounding board, that grounding space for them to come release that to, because they have so much going on during the school day or wherever they're navigating their with their friends. And then takeaway number 3 is putting things into words and to help figure them out. So remember that there's, Jessica also pointed out there, the 2 ways to release the thoughts from our heads are by journaling or talking aloud. So when we help them realize that, and maybe we have journalers here, maybe people like talk it out. And so they do like talk it out, really, again, going back to being that grounding board and that place they can do that, or providing that space and that security of helping them figure out where they can journal, the things that they can do and do it safely so they don't have siblings looking over their shoulders or things, and figuring out, having that conversation with how to keep that to themselves. And then number 4 takeaway is that having that safety belt into place. So in terms of the phone and having those conversations, as she was talking about in the book, The Phone Book, and how we can navigate all those different things, but really that we can have those agreements with our kids before giving them that phone. And again, she just said, go look family tech agreement across the internet, find the one that fits for your age group, and giving you ideas on how to even navigate that conversation. What are the talking points you need to have? But again, we're just suggesting that before you give a phone, that you've had those conversations and those agreements are in place before, not after, because it's hard to take those things back once it's already out there, but to really navigate that. And then that leads us into number 5, especially as we're talking about the social aspects of group conversations of everything, is not to make assumptions. We as adults do it all the time too, but really it's trying to be that role model and to let them start asking more direct questions, but teaching that early on, that rather than assume someone's not responding, like she said, their phone might have died, but we don't know unless we ask, and we don't let those stories start in our heads. And so the more we help them navigate that as we're navigating it ourselves, the more we can have these conversations. So let me know what I missed.
That was a great summary. No, I love that. Good job. That was absolutely perfect. Thank you for summarizing all that.
Well, I think it's just so important to like reiterate everything that came out, because our brains are going like that back and forth all the time. And the more we start to practice that skill of really putting those into place as we're listening to something and listening the thing. And I'm all about implementing. because like from the takeaways, take one that really spoke to you, listen to your gut, and like implement that today.
Mhm.
And the more, otherwise, it's just potential knowledge. Jessica
Yep.
gave you so many great ideas today. Like, just take one from today and start implementing that one. But let's hear your final takeaway for us today.
Ah, if I think if I have a preteen, I think a family tech agreement is a perfect thing to do. If all this sounds like way too much, start there. Start with a family conversation, that's starting off many conversations, but with that. Okay, so if you're there, that's what I'd recommend. And if you have an older teen, then I suggest that response, that really grounded, presence, listening response is great for all age, but especially older teens. So if you're like, oh, that's way too much information, those would be where I would start. And
I
hopefully
love
that.
that too. And just pick your own starting place. Again, whatever has spoken to your heart during this, just take that one thing that is that because it's your intuition that matters. You know what's going to work for your family, for your kids. And so thank you, Jessica, so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure to have you on here as we navigate those social teams, because it is a tough subject, but it can be fun if we start doing it together, helping each other, supporting each other. And my goal is that we enjoy all the years we have with our kids, no matter the stages. So thank you, Jessica, for helping us navigate that today so we can have more joy with those teenage kids and have those conversations so they're more open to having those conversations with us.
Oh,
Thank you.
thanks for having me, Michelle. Great to meet you. And thank you to all the listeners for all the stuff you're doing. It's being a parent is an incredibly important job. So go easy on yourself. Give yourself lots of grace. You've got a really important job. So yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for joining us in today's episode of the Mama Genius Hub podcast. If you found value in our conversation, please share this episode with another mama who might benefit. Sharing helps us build a supportive community and reach out to more mamas like you. After all, it's more fun when we do motherhood together. Until next time, stay motivated and continue to pursue your dreams as you shine in your genius.